What's up? It is 3 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. Thanks for tuning in to Cannabis Legalization News, where we explain marijuana laws so you can change them. Today, we're basically doing a state roundup. Hey, Tom. Hey, Miggy.
Hey.
What's happening? Thank you so much for joining us, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, man. I'm telling you, there was a lot of good cannabis news floating around. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Tom. You can find me on Instagram at Cannabis Industry Lawyer. Go there and send us your dank pictures of legal weed so that we can get you and do shout outs for you on Name the Strain later. We're gonna have to name the strain.
It's been a busy week, right?
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I mean, it's crazy busy out there. The amount of cannabis news is obscene.
Yeah. Start with Tennessee. Limited Tennessee medical marijuana compromise bill heads to governor's desk. Compromise bill.
Tennessee. I mean, that's one of those states where when you're getting into that, you're getting into it. And then we have another state that happened over the past week that you're like, wow, now we're really starting to crack into it if those states are starting to legalize, you know?
Well, and this is why I don't play that game no more. What state's going to legalize? Like, I never saw South Dakota, North Dakota, anybody doing those things, you know, and it's always about the process and how you, your constituents or whatever bills are in play. And because we already know marijuana is more popular than anybody, like Republican, Democrat. It's a no brainer, this thing. But yeah, with Tennessee, though.
Tennessee, that's amazing. And then so let's go into the specifics of Tennessee. What else is going on in the Tennessee thing? So Tennessee legislature on Wednesday sent the governor a bill to expand the state's limited CBD program and create a commission to study broader medical marijuana legalization. What bullshit.
CBD program. The legislation represents a compromise between reform supporters and opponents. Though advocates remain disappointed that more comprehensive medical cannabis legalization measures were rejected in committee's earlier sessions. Yeah, I mean, a CBD program?
CBD program? What do you want to do? Go back to 2007? I realize most of the CBD cultivars arise after 2007, but still. And then study the larger amounts of medical cannabis. What? Like all the other states and all the science out of Israel for the past few decades. Oh, and every other study that the government has ever funded that has found out that they are scheduling this thing incorrectly. All of that was just not enough. Tennessee needs more study,
or the actual patent 6630507, like the one that actually proves that there's a medicinal value, you know, amongst other chains.
Exactly. It's one of those deals where when that happens, you're just like, God damn it! I wish I was a cat, because you have to deal with these people, and it seems so absurd and arbitrary and crap. And you're like, and this is reality. You're going to have no medical cannabis program, and you're going to say we're going to study it. Great.
You know what's funny? This occurred to me today, as you know, we talk about the process, the legislation, and whatnot, and like this whole left, right, Republican, Democrat type thing, where it's like the liberal agenda or the right agenda or the left agenda. You really can't have a freaking agenda, because this legislation proves still that even with everything we know, Tennessee still kind of we're in 1999-ish, you know?
Not even, because they didn't have CBD they didn't know of CBD in 1999. So like, it's just the prejudice against the plant is thick. And so like, you know, more prejudice against the plant. That's all that is. And then it was voted quite well. I mean, like, it appears that there's going to be a 9-member commission that will be tasked with analyzing federal and state cannabis laws and helping to prepare legislation to legalize medical marijuana. The measure states that the implementing a medical cannabis market will be incumbent on Congress rescheduling the plant. So they're saying that their medical weed ain't coming to Tennessee until legal weed comes to America, which is terrible. But, you know, like,
it's a weak sauce. So like on either party for this particular state, for this particular moment, everybody can say, yes, I support it, because shit ain't gonna happen for another, you know, this is a weak stance. And like we saw again with Alabama, you know, that
that's me. I'm a guy from Tennessee. You see how I've like totally crashed and I don't have any brain, it's just eyes and a mouth? This is a person from Tennessee.
Seriously though, like what point what is the procrastination? Why are we putting this off? Where's the, you know, the studies to save the children? Why?
Right.
It's not. These are all irrelevant issues that they're just.
Like the stress is getting to me. The stress is so getting to me. I think I've gone bald.
That's a good one.
This is what would happen. Like, it's just all the stress.
Dude, I bet if you move and try to get some trails too, so anybody who's like doing more than smoking can be like, "Whoa, dude!"
Right.
But remember, Alabama though, we just covered it, right? Like we actually watched the live debate at the and then they was a 9-hour filibuster.
9-hour filibuster.
Mm-hmm. Took until the next day to actually come to a conclusion that was okay. We're going to pass this out of the House. It still has to go to the Senate, but again, somebody says I have no sound. Do we have no sound?
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
They need to turn up the volume. Oh, hey, if you're joining us from LinkedIn, thanks. Because we're actually streaming from LinkedIn now. And so welcome from LinkedIn. And if you haven't liked our cannabis legalization news page on LinkedIn, please do. We usually have posts from my blog, Cannabis Industry Lawyer, and other news regarding cannabis legalization on that.
There's always a lot going on. I mean, state by state, and you as a lawyer, all this is just business. For me, it's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's one day I can drive across state lines and not be a criminal.
I know. Shout out to C3 and all of our other members. We really appreciate everybody that likes to hang out and talk about cannabis legalization news in the industry. And if you enjoy our stuff, consider joining the channel to support it. So what else, man? I need to get to the next story because this one on Tennessee is kind of bumming me out. It seems like it's progress, but it's really not. You know what it is? It's one of those hollow Easter bunnies, like where you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. The size of that chocolate bunny. And that chocolate bunny weighs like 4 cents or 4 ounces, not even, because it's just all hollow. And that's really what it is. It's like, oh, wow, they're passing it in Tennessee. Well, what about their program? So they can have up to 0.9% THC. So it's a hemp program. Yep.
Yeah. It's another nothing burger that somebody like, they're going to argue about this when there doesn't need to be an argument. And then just dragging this out for the constituency, like just to have a point, right? Like that's all there is. There's no actual for your people. There's no, betterment of your society, because legalization would do that. Instead, they're gonna say, yes, I stand for it, but we're gonna do this bill, and at the same time make you mad about like building a wall or some bullshit. And even though like it doesn't matter for you in Tennessee, the distraction of politics is way too much. But just like with Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama did a little bit better than Tennessee. Let's talk about Alabama's program. Alabama medical marijuana bill headed to Governor Ivey's after historic House vote. I tell you, though, I mean, like those poor people from Alabama, that's one of them that we listened to. He was one of those guys that was testifying at the hearing. And so it's pretty good. Like, final approval of a bill that would create a statewide medical marijuana program following 2 historic votes that spanned more than 2 days.
That 9-hour filibuster is painful though, because there were people making great points about like why they should, but the ones that were against were again just stupid, idiotic rhetoric. One guy having bad allegory about how he just came from Florida and his son, his friend's son, was an addict, and he's like the first thing he smoked was marijuana. That's why the gateway drug. Then the other one was more studies needed. Like this is complete bullshit that they throw out there all the time.
Yeah, it's always more studies, because all the other studies that have like demonstrated, medical efficacy and also no death. That what else do you want to study about it?
Yeah, and then that's the thing is like these people that are against cannabis altogether, like everybody that's against it, politicians, medical. There's got to be some ulterior agenda, right? Why are we still choosing to villainize and put people behind bars? Because that's essentially just all this does. We're not saying it's the only choice for you. We just want you to have a choice, a medicinal choice, a wellness choice. It's an option.
Yeah, I mean that's really important. But let's talk more a little bit about the bill. It would authorize the use of medical cannabis for about a dozen conditions, including cancer, chronic pain, depression, sickle cell, terminal illness, and HIV/AIDS. Patients need doctor approval to use medical marijuana and can only be obtained from special dispensaries. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Alabama rolls this out. From what I've heard from Che, who has been on the show before, shout out to her, they are probably only going to have 4 licenses. And so we're talking like Curaleaf is happy, like it's going to be a multi-state operator that's going to come in and then just own the market, which again, we don't need cartels, even ones set up by your state to control the price of marijuana.
Well, how will that work too? Like once the cartels, like, because that's essentially what it's an oligopoly.
And so like, when we say it's a cartel, it's kind of like what we mean. It's like OPEC, where they know what the supply is, and so they control the supply to make sure that they control the amount of revenue that they'll receive.
Right, but I'm saying like as state by state, as we knock these down dominoes, and everybody gets a medical, somewhat CBD hemp program, right? Essentially, it is just a cannabis marijuana program in every state.
Yep.
What's the recourse for, like, okay, because everybody says, hey, if every state, if over half the American states legalize cannabis, which they're already at,
right?
We would have had legalization by now because of a default, like, okay,
no, there's no default,
right?
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, like, it's just one of the laws. The reason why you try to get any law that you can on the books, even the unconstitutional ones, is that they stay there for a while. For something to get thrown out as unconstitutional, Schedule 1 weed's still there.
Yeah, and then I was just watching a 420 documentary. It's called 420 documentary on Amazon. If you got it, you should watch it because they really get into Anslinger and how he, in his position for 40 years. Who else has a job for 40 years in the government structuring policy and again this
disseminating lies, purely disseminating lies. Look at this. We're getting people from LinkedIn are actually watching our stuff. So shout out to LinkedIn. We're actually on that now as well. So that means we're streaming to you on Facebook at Free THC, on our adult use Facebook group, on this channel, and then also on LinkedIn. So awesome. Something that's not awesome about the Alabama medical marijuana law that is going to pass is that the bill forbids smoking, vaping, or ingesting cannabis in baked goods. It can be consumed as tablets, capsules, gelatin, or vaporized oil. And the bill requires any cannabis gummies manufactured to have one flavor.
What the fear mongering and just cornering of the bill, like the cannabis itself, like where did it hurt you? Why do you have to, like, limit so many options for a plant? It's not like with oranges, you can only have orange juice. This is ridiculous. The bill also the bill passed 2 floor votes by comfortable margins and appeared to have wide support from Democrats and Republicans, but a small group of GOP legislators, which included Rep. Mike Holmes, Reed Ingram, Pike Road, Charlotte Meadows, Montgomery, and Wingo, and filibustered the legislation for hours, hurling multiple attacks on it. Again, 9 hours. It could have been a one-day conversation. Yeah. This is why we don't have nice things, because they waste their freaking time on debates that don't need to be debated. There's nothing wrong with this plant.
Yeah. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. But the filibuster group said that the bill was anti-Alabaman or anti-Alabamian. Not sure how they pronounce that. Would open the door to recreational marijuana, which the bill actually bans. So the part of this bill that after it's federally legal will be unconstitutional right there, or had been presented too quickly to the legislature, which that was hilarious. They had to get out of 7 committees before it came up for a floor vote,
Yeah. I mean, none of this stuff happens fast. Like, all their whining and bullshit rhetoric is just that, is bullshit. It's like, okay, this is why we can't have nice things. This is why it's easier to put someone behind bars than it is to release them, because now we have this hurdle, these constituent people, these legislatures that don't believe in regular common sense. Why do they have to control? Why do you have to? And again, it could be the control for the minorities, because it's still the poor and who are mostly incarcerated for this plant.
Yep. And they still had to put up with a whole bunch of hostile amendments to the bill. I mean, hostile amendments to the bill. You can't smoke it. You can't vape it. You can't enjoy it. Like, whatever you do, make sure you can enjoy it. And then it has to be in a pill form. This is going to end up being one of those extraordinarily, you're not going to be able to get a job in it, unlike other states, not Illinois, but states like California. And it looks like New York's really shaping up to be more like a Colorado, which is pretty freaking awesome. I bet New York industry gets up and going, and then I'll be sitting here in Illinois going, boy, wouldn't it be nice to be able to actually own a fucking cannabis license, as opposed to boy, how's that litigation going for the cannabis licenses?
Well, in New York, so glad that it happened for them too, because I just got done watching another the what's going on in Plano, Texas with the protests. Something like that happened in New York years ago, where a black man was incarcerated for marijuana and then died behind bars. Like, that's just, how do people magically die behind bars? You know, and this is because you're taking away the power over a plant, right? Like this, now you're not even a human. You don't have rights.
That's right. And that's one of the things that I've seen going around. They want to amend the 13th Amendment to get rid of that slave clause that, says like you're not allowed to have slavery. And then when it goes, except as punishment for a crime. So they're trying to amend the 13th Amendment to get rid of the slave clause, which I think is good. I don't care that you've committed a crime. You still should not be able to be made a slave then. And so, especially if you're going to have weed be illegal, that's just the punishment does never fit the crime. Not when it comes to cannabis and anything that's, again, we can talk about like not paying your taxes, but until then, it's always about just the plant, possession of. If you watch that 420 documentary, it shows Bush, Senior saying, look, we are arresting all users and sellers. Like you are the target. If you smoke you were the target. And that was the official policy. Tommy Chong was the target. Lance Glore was the target. That's Weldon Angeles. He was the target. Basically all of Humboldt County. And so it's ridiculous. I mean, I love hearing this. I shouldn't really love. I find it fascinating hearing the stories from like Kevin Jodrey, who's lived in Humboldt for years and years, about the helicopters that still come. Yeah. And now they're starting to use drones, and then people will just drop out of the sky, cut down your plants, and get back on the helicopter. It's fucking weird.
Well, I think you can just take a break now because right now it is 4:20 something.
Yeah, let's all try to calm down.
Relax here. Not all bad.
Not all bad?
No. Medical marijuana just took a giant step toward legalization in Kansas, of all places.
Kansas, I tell you, we're really cracking a lot of walls. Tennessee's didn't sound that good, though. Is Kansas any better than Tennessee's?
See, Kansas took a first major step. Well, it's not really through. Again, it's going to get, let's hope this bill doesn't die in committee. It's all this.
A lot of bills do. Kansas took its first major step on Thursday when conservative Republicans who dominate the state house, pass a bill that tracks the national trend and bucks federal law. Kansas-style legalization would regulate everything from patient access to cannabis advertising.
Yeah, it seemed like a pretty wild one. The historic floor debate stretched on for nearly 5 hours, laying bare divisions among Republicans. The bill passed 79-42 and heads up to the Kansas state. Some lawmakers argued that legalized medical marijuana fell in line with small government philosophies. I don't get that part. Like,
nice. Small government, man. It's why are you sticking your nose in people's business and arresting them for a harmless plant when you could have just collected some tax dollars off of it and made sure through regulations that what they were selling was pure?
Oh, you mean freedom, capitalism?
Freedom, capitalism, America. Yeah.
The bill, an amendment added Thursday requires conditions on the list to be reviewed every 3 years with potential to be removed if evidence about the benefits of medical marijuana change. Again, if we can't study it, how are we going to know? But yet we know because there are patents. There are 9 federal patients at one time.
There's Dr. Michelin.
This is, you just want to hit your head on the wall and just, or something. But
but then look at that. 20 medical conditions are on it. So they include Parkinson's, PTSD, and epilepsy. An amendment added on Thursday means the list to be removed. You mentioned that. Bill also includes limitations on the forms of medical cannabis available. In short, nothing people could smoke or vape. And this happens all the time. They did this in Florida. They still kind of have shitty flower in New York. You have to have like ground cannabis flower and no more THC than a 20-to-1 blend. It's silly. And so now, the same thing's happening with all these people. Physicians would have to get a special state cert to recommend medical marijuana. I'd like to see what type of licensing structure they have. Did they mention anything like that?
I don't think they did. But it's funny you mentioned about the New York and their grounded up weed is now that they have recreational. It's going to be amazing to see how their regulations started out shitty with the ground up weed portion, but then now they're going to go recreational. Woo!
Yeah.
That the residents are going to be like, the weed's going to be improving like 100% right away.
Provided that New York can pull off what an industry like Colorado or Washington State or all the West Coast has done, and not some bullshit oligopoly rigged market like you see in like Florida or Illinois.
Right. And I think New York, there's so much invested interest there. I think they might hit it off okay.
I hope so. And that's one of the things, I'm still trying to work through some type of deal in Illinois to get rid of the lawsuits and hand out licenses. But people have to make compromises. And Illinois is not that pretentious of a state, but Chicago is pretentious. And right. So like they don't want to make deals anyway. But there you go. So Democrats in Kansas, not Illinois, offered only a handful of amendments attempting to set a percentage of licenses for dispensaries or growing operations that must be given to equity groups like Black, Latino, or low-income Kansasians. Kansans. People of Kansas, thank you for joining us. Explain to us in the comments how you spell your name or say it. Is it Kansians? Kansans?
I think enunciate. Right. We also got now Minnesota marijuana legalization bill clears the 11th House Committee on path to the floor. Yes. Yeah. Minnesota does have a medical program already.
They do, and their medical program is not terrible, but it's kind of terrible. It's too I'm not sure if it's completely vertically integrated. I should talk to my people from Minnesota, but man, the House Taxes Committee cleared legislation by a vote of 12-6. Its next and final committee stop is Ways and Means, and then you know what happens?
Hopefully it doesn't get stuck.
No, floor action. If it gets out of the next committee, they get some floor action.
Nice.
Yeah. And so it would allow adults 21 and older to purchase and possess up to 1.5 ounces of cannabis and cultivate up to 8 plants, 4 of which could be mature. So the possession limits clearly only make sense when you are going to the dispensary to buy weed. Because if you're able to have 4 plants in flower and 4 plants in veg, man, that's going to be more than 1.5 ounces if you aren't poisoning your plants.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be a weird one to enforce, right? Like, how do you prove that 1.5 is from a store versus home grow? Because then all home grow is safe. That would just be great.
There we go. So this House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler said that Minnesotans across the state have personal experience with health conditions being improved with cannabis. They have seen the current prohibition model using the criminal justice system has failed to keep cannabis out of the hands of kids, failed to stop the use of cannabis in Minnesota, and has in fact created more problems than cannabis itself. I agree. I think the cannabis laws, by and large, on the nationwide scale, especially at the federal level with its complete prohibition, does more harm than the cannabis plant itself.
Prohibition's failed. It's pure and simple. It's ruined more lives, American lives, everybody's lives. I mean, I have to say American because we are, but overall, right? Like this whole our export of prohibition, right, with Nixon and the UN has just gone out of hand. Nobody's better for this. You know what? Some places will lash you for it and beat you. Why? You're not servicing your people. You're not providing rules that help everybody. Rule number 1: don't be an asshole. I don't know.
There's some other good bills that are out there, man. So we'll follow that. Hopefully we can go live with Minnesota Vote. And I really want to absorb that bill to see what type of licensing scheme they're going to use. We hope that it's a more distributive type of licensing scheme as opposed to the vertically integrated licensing scheme. So you can have an ecosystem of an industry and innovation and small business as opposed to Trulieve and Cresco.
Yeah, and then we have Missouri trying to do corrections. Missouri House bill gives hope to those sentenced longer than 10 years. A Missouri House bill is seen as a last hope for some offenders hoping to serve a shorter prison sentence. After the Missouri Supreme Court ruled last year that particular law would not be applied retroactively to some offenders' cases, House Bill 504 became the next best hope for clemency. House Bill 504 states that nonviolent drug offenders sentenced under a particular section of the law with no prior law offenses can become eligible for parole after serving 10 years of their sentence. The bill's co-sponsor, Sherry Tolson Rice, Republican from Houseville, has introduced multiple criminal justice reform bills in the session in Jefferson City. The bills have addressed issues ranging from incarceration to easing employment restrictions for felons upon release. And I actually know in this article, there's actually a gentleman whose lives can be affected by it. Like The fact that someone is actually going to be helped by a bill that's correcting past convictions for cannabis is awesome and horrible at the same time. Like, why should this even be a thing?
Right. I mean, like they legalized. Well, they haven't legalized it because this is out of Missouri, so I'd have to see what it's about more. But that's good that they're making this type of progress before full legalization comes. And Illinois looks like it's done something really interesting as well. Illinois lawmakers have approved a bill that legalizes any amount of marijuana and to expunge past records. So Illinois lawmakers nearly allowed a bill to move to the House floor that would automatically legalize all cannabis possession, regardless of amount. So this hasn't been voted on yet, but there is a bill, House Bill 3085, that would expunge and remove any criminal record for cannabis. I'm sorry, I'm butchering that sentence. The bill's language removes all criminal penalties for possession of any amount of cannabis and automatically expunges any criminal record for someone convicted of a similar offense. That would be fascinating. Now, see about that. Do we have any terms of art that's defined in this new HB thing?
How much money do you think Cresco and GTI is going to fight this?
Why would they? Why would possession limits be upsetting to them?
I think any barrier that knocking down possession requirements will help structure your future market, and it's going to help structure your future culture. And when people don't need how many growers you got out there? Like 6?
No, I think there's 19 licensed cultivators, but there's overlap of ownership, and only maybe 5 of them control the lion's share of the market.
Again, if I can walk into a classroom size place and say this is the whole industry right here and know all your names, that's pretty messed up. Like here in Washington, there's at least more licenses than that. Like at least, providing people a chance to be involved in this market. But holy crap, dude, the fact that you have a small, that's your industry. That's sad. Right.
But that's really sweet that they would put together some type of bill that would allow for no possession limits.
Yeah. I think it's great.
And then I could assume that people would not have possession limits. Like they still might have the 1 ounce rule, but that could just be to control supply,
Well, any possession, like if you eradicate the possession, like criminality of it, then I can start growing, right? I can start, because there's no, again, if it's as legal as broccoli or tomatoes, then there's no reason for someone to jump my fence for it. There's no reason to, then you become fair competition. It becomes learning how to grow. It becomes learning more about the plant and knowing what you're doing.
Well, yeah, but it does say, but not manufacture or production of cannabis. So like they're legalizing possession, but not growing. Right. And so because they have growing rules. Like if you're a medical patient, you have your 5 plants. And then, if you have 5 plants, it's like $200 fine. Something like that. And so if you're growing marijuana for your personal consumption and you're sticking under 5 plants and you don't have a medical card, you essentially risk the penalty of what a medical card costs. Yeah.
That's not too bad, I guess. Then what else? Oh, you got your you're going on tour, right? You're gonna be doing the out of the Peoria tour.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's one of the things. Trying to figure out what Lauren was talking about with the possession limits. I shouldn't be having more than one conversation.
Oh, no. Because you asked about the what was it? The data, the art, and that's what she was trying to pull up.
No, I was asking if it exists anywhere else where there's no possession limits.
I don't think so. That's one of the reasons why I was like, this bill hasn't been passed yet, but that's really neat. And then you could see what they say and the what do they call that? The abstract synopsis. So the synopsis is introduced. It says, you can get it expunged for possession, but then it says it's different, expunge all criminal history records of arrest charged, not a blah, 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 cannabis. And then it says convicted or serving under possession or delivery. And then it says, but not manufacture or production. And so then, you could be caught with 5 pounds of cannabis and be like, what?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. When you take out this criminality, when you take out this smells of crime, and then how does society operate?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, think about that, because if that happens, then you could you could risk a ticket if you're growing your 5 plants and you just didn't happen. I mean, like, they said that you could get a license to do it. It's called a medical cannabis license, patient's license, or you could have as much as you need. I mean, that helps, because people are just living at home. And the cultivation knowledge, or the cultivation, the home cultivation, and the possession limits, they make no fucking sense. How can you have that?
Yeah. But and I think where I'm coming from, what I think is people are industrious no matter what, right? So if you take away this low bar, or not this low bar, but this legality, this criminality of it, if you take it away, then people will be industrious. They'll home grow. You might have future side farmer markets, like here in Washington when we did have medical cannabis, right? The rule for medical cannabis was you got to have a prescription, and that was it. And then, like,
think about the market that you could do on that. Like, if you wanted to have medical home grow, you could kind of do what Michigan did, where they had like so many caretakers that you could farm for, and your operation would only get up to 72 plants. That's another aspect of it. Now, if that license for the cultivation medically allowed you to then peddle it at a farmer's market, and you just had to like check their ID to make sure that they had their card, or you'd have to have BioTrack somehow integrated into that. So if BioTrack,
you don't though. See, like you're talking for your sell market.
You're being this is where you are an activist and I'm a pragmatist.
But I've seen it though.
I know, but that was in the past, and that ain't going to happen no more. If we want to get back to that, they're going to need to get their money, and they're going to need to ensure that stuff has passed. And so, like, they're going to still want a track and trace style system
for the regulated market. But say you take away this criminality in Illinois, right? And now you've enabled players to be like me, where I can grow some in my house. And then as private citizens, we decided to get together somewhere in a park or a building that we rented. Right. And then we bring our wares to like exchange and then we can invite the public if they want to come hang out with us. Like, it's all about semantics, but it's all about people having balls to do it, right? Because that's the thing about cannabis, right? We wouldn't have the market we have at all if people weren't willing to just stand up and do a thing.
But if it's an unlicensed, unregulated market, the licensed, regulated market gets pissed that they have to play by the rules and you don't. So my thing is like, well, how do you inject the rules sufficiently so you can have a fairly light market? And you really are just going to have to get your cannabis tested if you want to sell it. And then you would need a point of sale system, like a Stripe, like they have them in iPhones. They plug in, and then that could be integrated with your BioTrack or your metric out on the West Coast, some type of seed to sale tracing system. There's no reason why you couldn't have it be something you could check out with at a farmer's market. I just don't know, like in the hot summer sun.
Well, no, see, at a farmer's market,
the terpenes.
But it happens where you can be in a controlled indoor building, right? These were the markets that we used to have, and people would bring their wares. The thing is, I see what you're saying about the testing, but see, that should be for the big boys, for the large regulation. For a craft small grower, like, they don't require me, if I wanted to homebrew and I wanted to sell my beer at the farmer's market, I have to buy a license to sell, but that's it. I'm not getting my beer tested. I'm not doing anything. That's
weird.
Yeah, there's no quality assurance for beer testing. So, and then again, I live in the state where they decide cannabis, if it's medical, they'll test everything. But if it's recreational, we're not going to test it. Just THC and whatnot. Why? It's a freaking consumable. Either way, it should be all tested. So the way that people look at the plant is ridiculous. And this is what we're still going through with the regulation, right? Like, people having these bullshit arbitrary regulations, like capping THC limits, because we're not grown people. And if you require testing and I know what I'm about to consume, that's it.
Yeah. But that's why you need that track and trace system. I mean, so like, how do you know that what's being represented is that, I mean, that's one of the reasons why there's probably a lot of blockchain startups in cannabis for tracking specific types of things, as it would be applicable for doing those types of track and trace of the type of strain. So like, if you're growing, you usually are trying to track them to begin with, so you know what you're growing and what week it's on and all that, so that you can see where it is in its cycle. Why wouldn't you continue to label that stuff and then keep it packaged and keep some ledger or record of it, like its harvest dates and what data went into the cure, all that stuff.
Well, that's like all the craft stuff, right? Like when you go to a farmer's market where you're at, have you been to a farmer's market where everybody brings their tomatoes or whatever, right? Nobody has a list. I mean, or cheese, right? Something that needs to ferment and sit. Like there are other practices. You know, it's like when what is it in California when they had those raids on the organic milk people? You know, it's like
organic milk raids. That's hilarious,
right? But the government's always trying to protect you from yourself.
Right. That's true. That's true. You know, if they wanted to buy that raw, non-pasteurized milk, okay.
Yeah, as long as you let people know, hey, this just came out of Betsy and it's going straight to the bottle. So it's up to you. I'm just saying, man, we need to like be transparent in where the product comes from, but even the regulations are not transparent themselves, you know, to force what should be safety for us. But so you got what's going on?
Yeah. Cannabis Imp. We're gonna do a CLN tour. So this summer we're going on tour with Cannabis Legalization News, and we hope that we see you. Like I bought tickets to. No, there's gonna be a few. The one in Ohio and Kentucky, that ain't then. That's actually gotten pushed back to September. So next we're gonna be in Chicago on June 24th and 25th. Come on out to the United States Cannabis Expo. And what is it? It's cannabisimp.com is where you can get those. I went to a few of them last year. They're good. They're good trade shows. We're back to trade shows, everybody.
Yes, we're getting there. We're getting slowly get your shots, or just don't go out. But you know, just
get your shots. Screw that. You know, get your shots and then head on over to Chicago. We're gonna skip the Michigan one. We're gonna instead go to Seattle, Washington. So I'm gonna be chilling with Miggy in Seattle around July 15th or 17th. When's that Fish concert?
I'm not sure. It's in my calendar though. But yeah, July is when you'll be out here, bro.
Sweet. And then and then after that, we're gonna do the Tri-State over in Philly in late August. We'll be in Ohio and Kentucky in September. Humboldt for my Ganjier certification. So I'm going to hang out in the Bay Area for a bit and then go up to Humboldt for the certification. And I have to get my tolerance up. So please help me smoke a lot of weed, especially high quality weed prior to that. That would help. And then St. Charles, Missouri in November.
Nice. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you in person and doing the live together.
Yeah, and then we should have shirts here in a couple of weeks. So tune in. Thank you guys for watching and supporting the channel. Don't forget to hit them likes and then subscribe. Maybe hit the bell. And then let's play some Name That Strain and give away something for a winner. Should they play for a T-shirt, Cannabis Legalization News T-shirt, or should they get one of my old books?
T-shirt, dude.
Let's go for the T-shirt. All right.
Look at those shirts.
We got a name.
All right. This is a fun one.
This is a fun one. This one's been in the news.
Yes. Look how pretty it is, though. That's definitely a Hunter Forest green. Oh, and look how red those hairs are.
That is quite the contrast between the deep forest green and the red hairs of the pistole. So yeah, man, that kind of reminds me of like a pine tree almost.
You mentioned the news, and Boots said it went for purple, but unfortunately not, brother. It's not. Hopefully, purple is really purple.
No, this is.
We got Kev Liv got it.
Skittles. Shout out to Skittles and Turpogs. They. This is one of the things, man. Like I don't know. And then hey, tell him to go. Follow me at Cannabis Industry Lawyer on Instagram and DM us and get us his address so we can send him out a shirt. But that's one of the things that they run into with regulations. I don't think the Skittles name in and of itself would have been approved by regulators in Illinois.
Well, again, Gorilla Glue. I mean,
Gorilla Glue these different. That's why it's GC4 now, or is GG, whatever it is. So they just went into the abbreviations of it. So how little does it need to be before it Skittles? And that's so wrong because like when they grew that plant and they smelled it, it was because it had that fruit flavor smell, like the rainbow. Like what are they? How lame? How worse would sales have been had they named that mixed fruit or fruit salad?
Well, that would be a good one. Fruit salad would be good. But again, people are not very creative. Like you got Fruit Loops. What other ones are out there that?
Girl Scout cookie became GSC or whatever. Yeah,
but it's just like but again, it's a bullshit because it's like with the branding and here in Washington State, it's like, what about the children? We don't want them to be confused, right?
Yeah.
Like they might confuse the Fruit Loops that I'm smoking with the ones that you buy. Like, what?
They said this was Girl Scout cookies. Oh, kids love Girl Scout cookies so much that they sell them.
But you can get cotton candy vodka.
Yeah, that's right. You can buy cotton candy, whipped cream vodka. That's fine. And you can buy as much of it as you would like.
Seriously, it's the great hypocrisy of it all. Idiocy. I don't know.
Yeah, well, collectively we are quite wise, but we are also very, very stupid.
So let's put some shade on cookies.
Put some shade on the cookies.
What's up, Burner?
Wait a minute.
Why are you guys fucking up?
To name that strain sufficient enough? Because somebody named it, right? We got them, and then we didn't have it. There was no submitter on that, So DM us some good weed picks. But Skittles is believed to be an indica dominant marijuana strain bred from a mix of grape ape and grapefruit, crossed by another undisclosed strain, and it produces this candy flavored strain bred by third gen family and terphogs. The chunky colas explode in a spectrum of light green hues and emit a sweet tropical blend of fruity flavors.
I had some out here, some Skittles, and I'm not impressed. But again, it could be the grow. I don't really put a lot of heart into like these descriptions because I mean, you really need a good grow to achieve all those fine terpene, values, the good purging, extraction, all that stuff. Whatever case it is, the process. I just like, okay, it's good weed.
Oh man, yeah, and then I want to give a shout out to Mars Hydro on that one. If you go to like Mars Hydro, they sent us one of those $900 lights. So it's an FC 6500, and we're going to be doing a run with it. And the soil got cooked up, and it's going to be this organic super soil. In theory, this would be one of those beds that you might be able to become regenerative, where you could mix the soil back in. Really looking forward to this run of medical from this little patient here. I tell you, it's like a 5x5 tent, and it's a really nice light spectrum where they're very spread out. So that's one of the problems with a lot of those grows that you have. You just get that one light, like maybe like a quantum board or something. Yeah. No, this one's
even dispersion
and even dispersed. So like there's really no like the coverage issue is really broad and good. And then you can dial that sucker all the way up and then all the way down. Really excited to see what that is. And so follow the channel for some coupons. We'll have some coupons from Mars Hydro.
Well, I'm looking forward to your footage too, man, just to see the process. Where you at now? You just setting up? Are you gonna get the dirt and
dirt's getting ready, and then the seeds are popped. The seeds are probably going to be ready to be planted into the dirt next week. So next week,
shit!
We'll do we had the light set up and the dirt set up. That I gotta edit that video and post that next week, and then the seeds or the plants now should go in, and then week one and then we just name it for veg and then name it for flower. Yeah. And of course, I'll be touring around. So but we'll make enough of them. I mean, thanks for Mars Hydro mailing me a good piece of equipment.
Well, the amount of knowledge you're going to gain from this, dude, because it just takes that firsthand interaction, personal experience to know what's good weed, really. That's it, really. Let me go back to my shade.
Go back to shade, bro.
I'm really disappointed and this is the MSO issue, right? This is that when things get so big, because like Burner, he's been praised as this brilliant, and I get it. You're big, bro. You're a big company with different little like Subway. You're a franchise. Somebody's making decisions not for you,
right?
But they're also representing you and your brands. Jesce, I hope I say his name right, or is it Heskey Horton? Activist out of Oregon. He's also, I think, co-founder of Minority Business Leaders, something like that. But in his post on Instagram, he wrote, "So at Cookies Portland 503 comes to me to buy weed for their grand openings. I pull my best, send it over. 3 weeks later, I don't hear anything. I hit them up. They say they rejected my weed and won't put it on the shelf. I'm confused as fuck." Yeah, and this is so weird. I'm confused as fuck. And while they promote all our competitors, later on, someone hits us up with this. I'm floored. One more reason to support local farmers and F big cannabis. Sometimes shit. So what he's talking right now, he's showing a picture of if we can zoom in on the actual picture, but what he highlighted, if we can't zoom in or whatever, in these regulated markets, they have to annotate the producer who brought that. And right there, it says Loud brought that. Why would Cookies tell him they're not using his stuff?
Right.
And again, I don't know how the money transaction here. Do you front them? I wouldn't think you would front them. I mean, I get you're pissed. They should be promoting you because they're using your weed, but it seems to be just the great stupid at this point right now. Like how do you get so big? You try and do business with, like, again, one of the biggest minority cannabis activists out there in Oregon, and then stiff them. Seemed like a pretty dumb decision on my part.
Not only that, like they rejected his supply, and then they bagged it up and sold it. So, like, how much volume is Cookies selling because of the brand that it made? People are just like, oh, I got to go buy that Cookies. Oh, and by the way, like, that Cookies brand, doesn't that appeal to children? So how is that going to get into new states? Because like a lot of these regulations, when it comes right down to it, says you can't have cannabis branding, names, whatever, that appeal to kids. And what the fuck appeals to kids more than cookies? Seriously. And so, like, was the sales so high that eventually they were just like, fuck it, sell that one stuff we said we rejected? What did they think that they weren't going to find out? I mean, like, it's one thing. So you've stiffed him. So now he's got some AR that's, going past 90 days, becoming uncollectible. And they're thinking, like, you got to call a lawyer like me to go sue these guys.
Right.
And then you find out that they're actually selling it too.
But why would you just dangle on somebody like that? Like to me, this is where the business, the 502 or not 502, that's the law here in Washington, right. But the recreational side of things, sometimes it seems to be people get too layered in their own head where it's not that complicated issue. The man gave you weed. You say, okay, thank you for your weed. We're going to promote it now and throw it in their bags. Like, it's already, right. The motions have taken. Why? What's the beef here? I don't understand why you would tell someone you're not and using their stuff. But this is also the issue with this non-vertical shit, right? Like if you make all these horizontal entities, you don't know who grows what, right? I just bought this again. I bought another batch of the Ooh La La because I did like him that first time,
right?
And it's not the Ooh La La that I'm buying it for. I'm buying it because it's the Mama Chan, the grower, who is really good. It's a really good grower, and so I was like, all right, I like this strain and I like this grower, so I'm buying more of that. But most consumers are not aware of the growers. Like, most people don't know. Most of them probably think Cookies is definitely some strain of Cookies. No, it's fucking local growers is what it is in that state. Cannabis is the only thing that's going to be grown in that state so far. Right now. Right.
And so that's one of the weird things about getting ready for federal legalization that we're not ready for either. But yeah, that's it for right now. That I think one of the things is kind of illustrates, though, is that it's kind of the Wild West. I mean, like, where you think that you're going to make some money, then you think you're at least going to get your product back. Then you find out that somebody else has already sold that product and said that they were going to send it back and still hasn't paid you. It sounds a little bit like the Wild West. And speaking thereof, let's go to the Wild West, where an Oklahoma judge has suspended the state's cannabis seed to sale requirement.
That was great news. An Oklahoma judge ordered a 60-day suspension of a rule requiring medical cannabis business in the state to use the METRC seed to sale tracking system. The regulators had contracted for the services, just metric,
yeah.
But this is huge because, stopping that seed to sale process is stopping that recreational infrastructure. That's what it's going to do, because once that recreational market gets in Oklahoma, dude. Because right now it is, they're having events. They're having a beer can palooza where they're going to have beer in canna camping on a lake. Like, people are having pot parties and not dying, folks. Like, not going to jail and enjoying life. Like,
we got to go to Oklahoma with the tour.
Dude, I'm just saying, this is like when you came to Seattle Hemp Fest and you saw 100,000 people smoking pot and not like getting into like the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
And then police were walking by and just kind of playing hacky sack. Like, it's a surreal experience when you're not a criminal, because it's a big nothing.
It's a letdown. At the end of the day, you're like, I'm tired. Let's have a beer.
It's a big nothing, because that's what weed is. You smoke it all day. You know what happens? Nothing. But yet, if I'm in the wrong state, a lot of shit's going to happen.
It's true. It's true. But there's over 10,000 medical marijuana licenses right now. And if they do not have to do the seed to sale tracking.
Texas has a lot of good Oklahoma weed.
Yeah. For whatever reason, I can hear myself somewhere else in my house.
Oh, they're like Alexa turn on?
I have no idea.
Yeah, but 10,000 licenses would definitely but Washington State, again, when it was medical here, and that's what I saw in Oklahoma was Washington State's old medical days was rising up. And I'd say they got another good year or two if they keep squashing out these bills trying to regulate them. Oklahoma is where you want to be.
Well, what I think the fun thing was that they said this is nice, and I'm glad that Oklahoma is smashing striking a blow for liberty in the sense that I don't like that states allow a monopolistic policy of just adopting a standard. For example, we're a biotrack state in Illinois. Oklahoma was trying to become a metric state. California is a metric state, and so it's a monopoly. And I think if that's what it is, it's like, well, they don't have to use metric, but they have to use something. That would be nice because a lot of software, for managing supply chain, because even if you weren't going to do the seed to sale tracking, you're going to need to manage your supply chain in cannabis.
Yeah. If your company, if you're going to be doing
and your inventory.
Right.
You're a retailer. You have how many products does the average Washington State cannabis dispensary stock? 100?
I mean, state or how many
different types of cannabis products do you think a dispensary in Washington State
has?
has?
Shit, easily. Yeah, totally. Yeah. They got 100. I mean, and then that's the thing, right? We have these aspirations of like legalization, and we think, when it is legal, there'll be like, I have a chance, right? Like to be that home grow guy out of my garage. But in the end, I want to be big enough. Like I want to be a Walmart or a McDonald's. I want to be something big because they're going to have, when you are that big, you're going to need that program, right?
I have a different philosophy on this. My business paradigm would be, I want to be sold out. Like if we have weed, I already want it, like just based on the reputation of the brand that you have and the quality of the product. As soon as it hits the dispensary, it's gone. And
right.
then that's it. Like, because like when you're in flower, you're in flower. You have 5,000 square feet or 14,000 square feet in flower. That's thousands of plants. That's just the output velocity of that building,
Right. And you're talking about you as a grower being in the grower business, whereas
right.
I'm thinking more of like as a hobbyist, right? So like, if I was going to be a hobbyist out of my garage and just, occasionally hooking up friends and maybe getting selling an ounce here and there just for extra cash, but not being a full on business, that prospect is out there because you do need that seed to sell, program for a real business, but the hobbyists don't. The hobbyists should be able to go to the farmer's market, sell some wares and call it a day.
What if there was like a license for, because like you're going to still need a license to do that. It's the same license you need for going on market and selling beer. I mean, most places have a beer farmers, have beer being sold at the farmers market. Why not follow that model? You just got to card them.
And I believe they pay like the license fees. Like it's not like they're taking a test to sell beer.
The state can collect the tax. When I go to a festival and I buy a beer for like $10, I'm sure the state's taking some tax on that.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely taxes in the farmers markets, but that's that all handheld. Like it's not something where you have to go buy a program. You have to be honest, right? There's a lot of that honesty. We trust you to tell us what you just did.
Well, I think that regulation will eventually always be a part of the market and taxation just for purity and control,
Well, definitely control. I mean, just like in Florida, with the corruption going on with the Gaetz probe that expands from the sex trafficking to cannabis and corruption.
I think it's kind of funny that we would talk about Matt Gaetz back when the Safe Banking Act and the MORE Act passed the Congress. Remember that like 4 or 5 months ago? And you're like, hey, this guy. And then because I didn't know him from Adam. I still don't. Now I just know that he's a skeezy guy out of Florida congressman. And a Representative Matt Gaetz vacationed in the Bahamas in 2018 when he was joined by a doctor who donated to his campaign and a former colleague of the Florida legislature. So that's Dr. Piazzolo and Halsley Bashir were united in their enjoyment of politics, fancy travel, and the company of beautiful women. They also had another mutual interest, Florida's $1.2 billion medical marijuana market.
They're trying to influence the regulated market, period. That's when you have this money and these people, politicians aren't out for you. When Gaetz spoke, and I heard him speak, he said real like common sense shit like prohibition doesn't work and all this other stuff. You're like, this is the first time this guy's ever talked about it. Like you can't tell me this is something that's, you woke up one day, had an epiphany that the cannabis prohibition is the worst thing in the world. No, someone took you on a freaking cruise.
Yeah.
Did a bunch of illegal stuff with underage girls.
Well, think about it. He enjoys drugs, clearly. And so how come and he was elected by Republicans. He's a big supporter of Donald Trump. Hey, you guys that are Republicans and like this guy and understand that they do drugs as well. How about you start supporting cannabis and tell your elected representative who's a Republican who voted against the MORE Act or the Safe Banking Act in Congress last year? Hey, don't do that. You know how you like to do drugs? And they'll say, what? Well, imagine that we were at a party where nobody else is around. Remember how you told me you like to do drugs? Then they might be like, oh, okay, I see. My constituency is telling me they like drugs. Maybe I should give it a try.
Right. But and honestly, right, drugs extends all the way from caffeine to heroin.
Well, it's not a political issue.
Yeah.
And so the regulation of them or the access to them is something that both parties seem to want.
And it's safe access and also proper just education. If kids knew and people knew, like Nixon fucked all these people's perceptions up, making marijuana Schedule I and heroin not. Like when you do this, then you have some bullshit like reference, and that's how you die, because you think, oh, that I'm not going to try that crazy reefer. That's number one. That's got to be the worst. Let me try some meth.
Yep. I tell you, man, it's something else. And so, yeah, they were trying to get the laws passed back in 2014 so that Gaetz and Pirozzolo and the Bashirs would have had a law passed so that they would have been some of the only people that could control marijuana in the state of Florida, because they actually had a long-standing nursery. And that was one of the weird things about the Florida law. For some reason, you had to have like a grove of trees or a nursery for whatever reason. You're like, well, why did you put that regulation in there? Now we know.
Yeah. But and then you still hear yourself?
Oh, yeah. I could go play What's Going On over there. And of course, my phone is not in my pocket. I have no idea what's going on in my kitchen. So I can't take us with you. If you want to rehash this story, I can go try to see what's going on. Of course,
I'll talk about the Biden AG. That way, right. Go
Wait a second. Let's at least do the technical difficulties bumper. I'm having some technical difficulties over there.
There you go. All right. So the Biden AG stresses that marijuana use in legal states is not a Justice Department issue. And I knew this was going to be a positive, good thing. Hey, I just heard that background. It was your phone. Got it. Nice.
I was streaming myself.
Hey, we need those clicks. Make sure you click, like, and subscribe.
Yep. I almost caused an infinite loop of me watching myself while I'm also talking to myself.
Like Tomception. So Attorney General Merrick Garland on Tuesday reaffirmed that he does not feel the Department of Justice should be using its limited resources to go after people using marijuana in compliance with state law. I mean, this is all we want, right? We just want to be citizens. We want to be just responsible adults. That's all we're doing. Oops, wrong button.
That's really freaking awesome. And then that just goes to show, I'm going to do some more issue on CBD, Delta 8, stay tuned for those. But, if they're saying we're not going to be enforcing this and the budget is going to say marijuana, not medical marijuana, so the DEA isn't going to have any money to enforce those laws, what, you think they're going to start busting the hemp industry that's selling Delta 8?
Again, I think they're about restructuring the DEA, because the DEA has to be the lab tester. Maybe they're going to take away the guns and restructure. Again, it's about refunding, not defunding all this police stuff, right? It's about reallocating assets and refiguring out how we do things. I mean, it's ironic that in from the article from 2015 that Pfizer, Lilly. Oh, good.
Wait, we have a bumper for this one.
Oh yeah.
Don't get look. Let's hit the great moments in weed history bumper, and then we'll get to that one.
What up? All right.
What up, weed history?
Weed history. So Pfizer, Lilly were the original medical marijuana sellers.
Yeah. How the tables have turned. Eli Lilly and Pfizer were the original marijuana sellers. So Abbott Laboratories sold 4 in 1935. Abbott is the only company that's still associated with medical marijuana. Its research arm, AbbVie Pharmaceuticals, was recently spun off as a separate company, and it manufactures the synthetic pot pill Marinol.
Well, you also missed a whole section there. In 1919 medical catalog, these companies listed several cannabis products. According to the Antique Cannabis Cookbook, almost 6% of all manufactured drugs at the turn of the century contained cannabis in one form or another. I think that when they lost, when cannabis got rescheduled, that's when Big Pharma was like, yo, lobbyists work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's pretty interesting that Park Davis became Pfizer, and they also had many of those cannabis products that were there. According to the Antique Cannabis books, almost 6% of all manufactured drugs at the turn of the century contained cannabis in one form or another.
Hey, this is interesting. For example, Squibb sold cannabis in powder form, tablets, fluid extracts, and tinctures. However, Squibb wasn't even the leader at the time with only 15 products. Interesting that they made powder. And then that weird ass, the Cannabumps that just came out.
Oh, that terrible thing. Yes.
Yeah. Not a good look, man.
But no, we covered that in my old book about the history of the cannabis laws when Dr. William C. Woodward with the AMA went to Congress in the 30s to testify against the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act of 1937 being spearheaded by Harry J. Anslinger. And they said, look, we don't care that you're going to regulate this stuff. We care that you call it the right stuff because currently we are using this in medicines, but we call it cannabis indica. Your doctors have no fucking clue what you're talking about when you're calling it marijuana.
Yeah. And again, if you have Amazon Prime, watch the 420 documentary. They really get into the 40 years of Anslinger's freaking rule of the, it was just horrible. Like you just watch it, cringe, just knowing you feel so helpless. But we are so much better off now than we were. Like the cat's out of the bag, toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yep. Park Davis, which is now Pfizer, had 27 different types of cannabis products. Upjohn, which I think is still a drug company out there, had 30 different cannabis versions. Eli Lilly, which was in Indianapolis, sold 23. And that's one of the rumors in Indiana why they're so anti-marijuana. The rumor is, Eli Lilly's there. It's Big Pharma. They don't want weed coming into Big Pharma. Big Pharma, that Eli Lilly could have 23 new products,
This is a neat little fact. The Park Davis even worked with Eli Whitley to create its own plant strain called Cannabis Americana, which was a domesticated indica strain. Park Davis was once the largest company in America. Now it's a subsidiary of Pfizer. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
Make your own strain for that. Well, do you have the strain? What is it? GS13 out there? Have you seen that?
I've heard of G13 from the movie American Beauty. It was the one that they had in that one where the kid next door who Kevin Spacey bought weed from evidently grew it and he had tens of thousands of dollars in a bank account and they left and they lived a normal stress-free life, I'm sure.
Well, the supposed origins of G13 was, at least from out here, is that it was created by Washington UW by the campus, like a cancer research thing. But again, I tried going there actually, and when you go to a college, they're so huge, you don't know where to start. Like with research, right. I try to hit up the cannabis division, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't know what you're talking about, you stupid stoner." But
next time, start with an email,
maybe. But there are out there people who have been refining and structuring cannabis, and yet they still want to say it has no medical effect. Benefits.
Well, yeah, but then they are saying something out of the other corner of their mouth because Marijuana Moments reporting that the feds announced a new standard for THC dosing to be used for research, effective immediately. So what is a standard dose? That new standard unit is 5 milligrams.
Wow. That's interesting.
That's a medically effective dose, though. I mean, the smallest microdose that I usually see is maybe 1 or 2 milligrams, but very often it's just, I don't see anything much under 5. So a 5 milligram dose for somebody who has no tolerance at all might be a nice place to start.
Yeah, the NIDA said that inconsistencies in measuring and reporting THC exposure have been a major limitation to studies in the cannabis use, making it difficult to compare findings among studies. The other thing, though, I mean, I have appreciation for their measurement, but again, the lab testing is not refined and standardized across the board, and that's always going to be the difference of like why you're going to have THC discrepancies from state to state, or THCA or Delta 9 or whatever else they're looking for, because unless your methodology is the same throughout all, I personally think there's too many variants to be like, this is how it's going to be for, the study to say that it is what it is.
Yeah, because then you get into terp profiles as well. And then you get into psych profiles and, your own morphology with how your brain fires. It's a very complex chemical. The endocannabinoid system is not simplistic. That's probably why we didn't discover it until the early 90s.
We're all snowflakes. And that's the thing, right? We're all these individual different endocannabinoid snowflakes that react different to Blue Dream, to anything Kush.
Hey, we got some international cannabis news. Let's do one of those bumpers and do some international news.
EU's biggest hemp producer sees profits grow 616% in 2020.
Nice.
The EU's biggest hemp grower, headquartered in Holland, saw full year revenues up 43% to 17.6 million in 2020, with earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation.
Huh? Yeah, EBITDA. Earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization.
You go, banker. So I mean, that's a standard reference, right?
Yeah, and then you would use that for multiples of small businesses valuations exceeding like $50 million. So like for smaller businesses, that $10 to $50 million is kind of this weird area where you could use one of each. Below $10 million, usually you're using seller's discretionary earnings, because they're a very small business when determining the value of the cash flow that you could buy. With EBITDA, you're trying to discount a cash flow to determine a stock price.
Got you. Yeah. So the numbers were in part driven by 1,089% increase in sales of the group's construction materials, arising from its May 2020 acquisition of Thermo Natur, a German manufacturer of natural fiber insulation. Right on.
Yeah, nice. Natural fiber insulation. Hemp insulation. I think that could probably be done with much less processing than making it into other stuff,
Again, everything that can be plastic, hemp can do better.
Yeah, it just does take a lot of research. And so hopefully they can use these types of sales to justify some type of credit line or other capital expansion to help them build out the infrastructure that they're going to need to create more better, I like using that term, more better products in hemp. It's a fascinating industry, because think of all the research and science that you could do in applying that to create those types of products.
Yeah. And then the group also saw a 43% increase in sales of CBD. Pandemic blues, maybe? I don't know. But because the CBD hype has already been peaked, I think.
It's not a hype, though. That's the thing. CBD works.
Right.
No, I don't think CBD is going to go down. I think CBD sales in theory could continue to normalize until they're really making a serious dent in Advil. So like, why can't I go buy CBD at Kroger? How come? I mean, go buy Advil. I can go buy, herbal supplements there. Okay, yeah. I'm sure you could. I'm going to go check next time I'm at the grocery store. See if I can buy CBD. Not going to buy it. Just going to see.
Well, you can buy CBD flower online too, just like you buy Delta 8. So, I mean, and honestly, if you live in a prohibition state, it's an okay alternative, right? It's not going to hit like a full entourage effect cannabis does, but it does alleviate anxieties. It does make you feel different than you are. So try them online. I have nothing in particular to recommend, though.
Yep. Business interest in 30 billion cannabis market up 140%. So cannabis growth inks a partnership with Southern Glaciers to expand distribution of its CBD infused waters to 7 states.
So which one are we at? The 30 billion one?
It's the very last one. Yeah. The cannabis industry is figuratively growing like a weed. London-based Euromonitor International says that legal cannabis is set to increase from 30 billion in 2020 to over 90 billion in 2025 as consumers increase their usage in diverse parts of all their lives. And think about all the ancillary businesses off that $90 billion. the side businesses on them. I mean, that cash flow of just sales in is going to result in so many other expenditures from that industry. So that's awesome that these types of beverages are getting out there.
Yeah,
it's that nano emulsion. That was a great guest we had on. Nano emulsion guy. When I get if Illinois ever hands out licenses, and we're all praying one day that'll happen, I could then go to one of the infusers, knock on their door, and be like, "Hey, can I buy this and get a contract with you to make these?" There's going to be real
opportunities. Lots of opportunities. I mean, shit. Similarly, Seattle-based Headset, a provider of aggregate data and analytics across the legalized recreational and medical marijuana market, reports substantial growth in the world's largest and fastest growing cannabis markets. So, like, even like you're saying, the auxiliary, right? So, like, Headset, a data company. I mean, like, their knowledge, their wealth of what they have been receiving is, valuable. So many, or in the can industry, it will be the can producers or whoever the container makes. There's just different options.
It's gonna be great. And then the problem is that people still think it's despicable stuff, and that's why we'll have a lot more of these episodes of Cannabis Legalization News.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. We're moving in the right direction, right?
Yeah, we got Lauren's now reporting from weed.
Yeah. Thanks.
Love it.
And before we go, let's shout out our new members: Time Jones, Tom Choi, Kind Mike, Cannabis Kelly Stover, Nabi Naga Spliffington, and Edward Robinson.
Spliffington has joined us.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to talk over the last one. What one was that?
It was Edward Robinson.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much for supporting the channel. At the end of the month, we always run our numbers, and then we give 50% to Freedom Grow for the commissary.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, guys, thanks for supporting the channel, and thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to keep up with all cannabis legalization news. We'll see you on Wednesday.